The original Coffee Talk was a nice graphic novel that really brought you into the world the developers had created. While I did enjoy the experience of Coffee Talk, it was the overall gameplay that felt flat for me, but everything else hit those perfect marks. It made me wonder if a game could be good with super simple gameplay. My answer to that was no for Coffee Talk, but surprisingly, another game published by Toge Productions was able to fulfill that. When the Past Was Around did something similar, and I very much enjoyed that game way more. The difference between the two was that in the game When the Past Was Around, you had to solve puzzles in order to continue the story, where Coffee Talk just made you serve the drinks. While somewhat similar in ideas, making the drink was a mechanic that was too simple to be intriguing on multiple playthroughs, which is why I enjoyed one way more than the other. You can still see that in the original reviews. However, I need to mention that recently I found that Coffee Talk did have alternative endings. However, in all my playthroughs, I never got them. I did multiple playthroughs, if I can remember it was 4, and in the comments of that video where I saw the alternate endings, some people also shared that they never saw them. Coffee Talk 1 had a lot of love and passion put into it, and the alternative endings maybe could have solved my issue for simple gameplay, but I never saw them, so it left my thoughts on that game the way they were. That's a shame because there was extra content for the game, and you guys saw, I even got all the achievements and still only saw the best ending. Now, Toge Productions came back to the universe of Coffee Talk to make a sequel, Coffee Talk Episode 2, Hibiscus and Butterflies. I knew about the existence of the sequel, but originally, I thought this was going to be a DLC story to the original game. To my surprise, this was a sequel to Coffee Talk and not just DLC, which at first did get me excited, but also not really. I thought it was cool that it was some continuation, but I never kept my eye on the game until it was announced that it was coming day one on the Microsoft Game Pass. That's when I said, alright, let's try it out. So I did, and now after playing it, is this more of the same, or was the sequel able to solve some of the issues I had with the first game? Was it able to fix the oversimplified gameplay issue? Well, let's get started. Before we officially start, I am going to spoil the stories for both games, so here's what I'll say. If you enjoy graphic novels that have a good atmosphere, soundtrack, and overall story, go play Coffee Talk 1, and then go play Coffee Talk 2. They are not only great experiences, but Coffee Talk 2 continues the story of Coffee Talk 1, which further develops the experience of Coffee Talk 2, so go and play them if you are into this type of genre. For the rest of you who are just curious on what I think, let's get started. Before jumping into the story, I want to give a little recap of Coffee Talk to further understand what made the experience good and what were missteps or bad design choices. Overall, I thought the game story was amazing. The writing of the character story arcs and the conversations they had was such a beautifully written story that made me fall in love with the game's characters and world. That was my main point as to why I really enjoyed it. Along with the music, art design, and atmosphere of the game, it was a nice cozy experience that I thought if people had the chance should try it out. However, it was the gameplay that felt flat, since the game felt more like it should have been a graphic novel more than an actual game. My main takeaway was the gameplay was so simple and not really important to the overall design. It made it feel like the gameplay was taking me out of the story. The overall experience was amazing, but the gameplay itself left me wanting a bit more. Not just the gameplay, the content they added, while cool, felt like it needed more time to brew, specifically the Tomato Chill page and Endless Mode. The Tomato Chill page started as a way to get more information about the characters' likes and dislikes, but only occurred once, and ended up just being an art showcase. Nothing wrong with that, but it implied that there'd be more, and there wasn't. The Endless Mode had the problem of its mechanics not being explained to the point where players almost definitely needed a guide to reach the 50 drinks achievement. With the overall length of the game and not being able to really have any replay value, it really made it feel like these additions were not incentivized or just not explained properly. Those were my overall thoughts on Coffee Talk. I do go more in depth in the original review, but as I mentioned, I still loved my experience. The atmosphere, world, and character stories, it was beautiful. And now the sequel is out, so did they make any improvements? Did they remove or fix a lot of those issues I had? Well, let's start with the story. In Seattle 2023, we return to our coffee shop called Coffee Talk. Right away, you talk to Georgie, one of the returning characters from the first game. You are just talking about days at the shop. This is the moment where the game introduces you to two new ingredients, hibiscus tea and blue pea tea. Georgie, feeling adventurous, decides to order something. You hand him a drink from one of the two new ingredients, and the game also tells you about the brand new mechanic, handing items to characters as you serve their drinks. The game tells you to hand a postcard from Freya to Georgie, and after that, the day continues with 2 brand new characters. The first to enter the scene is Lucas, a satyr who is a social media influence on an app called Tuber. Lucas comes in looking for a brand new local shop to drink at. You talk to him a bit about the social media life and get to know him. All of a sudden, the lights go out, and while you go to fix them, a banshee enters the store, scaring both Lucas and Georgie. While the 2 racists are at first scared, she is a calm woman named Riona. Riona comes in just wanting a break, and after ordering something, enters the conversation with Lucas and Georgie. She shares her hopes and dreams to become a singer, but right now is working as a package delivery driver. Lucas and Riona have a friendly conversation, and afterwards, the day ends with you closing up for the night. On day 2 is where the game starts to reintroduce characters from the first game again. This was an aspect of the game that I really enjoyed. As someone who took the time to get to know these characters in the first game, seeing all the characters come back was a nice surprise. Their stories, while having satisfying conclusions, never ended. Their lives continue and you are still a part of it. By serving them the drinks at your shop, it allows you to continue your conversations. Aqua and Myrtle are the first to return. They come in and are discussing a contract that Aqua got in order to publish her game. They both argue about how to go about it since they have their own thoughts on it. Myrtle tells Aqua it is a bad deal about letting this specific game publisher publish the game. Aqua thinks it could be a start, but Myrtle knows it's bad and wants Aqua to trust her. Afterwards, they both leave one after another, and Lucas tells us about how he wishes to get into contact with Riona again, wants to apologize to her, and leaves us some items to give to her. The next coming days, you start seeing more and more of the returning characters. Bailey's and Lua are getting married and still come to the shop. Hyde and Gayla also stop by and open up about the different aspects of their lives. Riona also comes in to talk about how she does feel sorry about her conversation with Lucas, and eventually gets in touch with him. Rachel has her pop idol career going strong and is teaming up with Gendru Remy to make a new single, and Georgie is investigating the vandalism that has been going across the town. Seeing all these characters come back was so great to see. The great thing about seeing them all is that you actually see the progression from the first game still being there. Bailey's talks about how he's not with his family anymore, but he's happy about it after everything that happened. Aqua and Myrtle remain friends after the first game. Lou and Bailey's are getting married. That's the biggest progression. And Rachel did pursue her dream. Everyone still has the development they went through, cementing that the writers not only did put a lot of thought into the characters, but they even dive deeper into characters or provide even more development for them. The writing is so good, in fact, that a character that I didn't like, I actually started to love in this game. Neo from the first game had the twist that he was not only your father, but that you were a time traveler. It was implied he came to just hoe around, but in this game, he not only developed as a character, but has started to understand the complexities of emotions. He became so in tune with himself, he now refers to himself as Silver, and his sister came to not only further show his growth, but to come and share tender moments with her brother. Silver also understands what love is and is searching for it, like the first game, but actually understands how beautiful it is, and how hard it is to find true love. He understands the beauty and the struggle it is to live on Earth. It is beautiful. This story dives into these types of conversation, and it is incredible. The conversation these characters have are great, which is why I try not to spoil them. The main plot is great, but it is the individual conversations that are amazing. But to wrap up the overall plots of every character, they end with these resolutions. Lua and Bailey's get married and invite Hyde and Gayla. Hyde actually not only implied that he knows your character from back in the day, but Gayla lets you know that Hyde cares for the shop, and Hyde is also moving back to Seattle and is doing a career change. Rachel makes her new album with Remy Gendru, and her dad even came to the shop one day with Gayla. It also shows that Gayla cares about both Mr. Hendry and Rachel. Lucas and Riona came up with an idea for a new show, with both of them excited for the new venture. Rachel also joins them for the first episode. Georgie not only solves the vandalism crime that were happening, he's able to get info for the community to bring them all together. With Lucas and Riona's help, Silver and his sister not only go on a trip, but Silver goes with his new date. And one of the best things about this is that you never reveal if that is your mom. You essentially tells Silver to just have fun. They both still know about your time traveling and that you are Silver's offspring, as your aunt even calls you that, but your character understands that love is special and not to be messed with. That's how I interpreted this anyway. Love is special and should happen naturally. This is how the stories for the characters end in the best ways. You even get to see Freya in the end, who got an opportunity to move to get better opportunities for her writing. It was amazing to see all this, and not just that, the story felt more connected. Your character character felt more connected to everyone. And it could be because you know these characters already, but in the first game, Freya was there the entire time and somewhat took center stage. On continuing the conversations, in this game, while some characters play that role, the barista now is the one at the center stage for all of this. They not only have one-on-one conversations, but even share their thoughts on the day before closing up, shares a toast for the wedding after party, shares their thoughts to encourage some of the characters, shows concern for everyone, and my favorite is that they share how happy they are to be related to such an amazing person, referring to Silver, as it is stated that he goes on to improve the lives of aliens living on Earth. This was a dramatic difference from Coffee Talk 1 since Freya was the one playing that role, with your character surrounded in more mystery and sagely wisdom. Now the barista feels more human, as if they develop just like their father. It is amazing and makes the story feel more connected, which is why I think that the story for this game is written so beautifully in comparison to Coffee Talk 1. I already thought Coffee Talk's story was amazing, but Coffee Talk 2 just found a way to transform the writing even more by making your character be the one playing Freya's role. It was beautiful to be a part of all these characters' lives. The conversations you have feel so real as friends being friends, showing the care they have for one another. That is truly the best way to explain the writing of Coffee Talk 2. The game feels like it is friends sitting down and talking about their days. If you have ever done that with your friends, you will understand. Those moments you share with friends are beautiful and irreplaceable, and the writers found a way to have those feelings be portrayed so accurately in the story. It's amazing, but those endings I shared weren't the only endings. In my first playthrough, some things were not perfect. When I first played the game and got to the point where Aqua and Myrtle didn't make up, I thought, oh my gosh, my actions have consequences. As I said, I never knew Coffee Talk 1 had alternative endings, so seeing these endings that had the situations as fine but not ideal, or straight up not the outcome I wanted, was shocking because now I felt as if I had failed these people that I want to help. But this also tied into the lore of this game. Since your character is a time traveler, it not only ties into your character going to specific days to ensure the best outcome, but it also encourages multiple playthroughs, fixing my issue with the original game. The original game I felt didn't have that much replay value, since I didn't know about the alternative endings. It felt as if replaying the game was pointless, but it wasn't. Technically. However, in this game, there are multiple reasons to replay the game since the characters may not get the best resolution. While this seems to be tied to the story, this is actually more of a mechanic fit with the gameplay. Coffee Talk 2 has the same mechanics as the first game. Pick a base, secondary, and tertiary ingredient, and that was it. It is still like that in this game, but they did add the 2 new ingredients, like I mentioned earlier. But that in turn seems like the gameplay is going to be too simple again, but it's not for 2 reasons. The first reason is the fact that the drinks definitely play a much larger role. Characters still come in very vague with their request, but it adds more to your experimentation. Since every character has different endings, it can dramatically change the pace of the story. Not just that, but Rachel's story has you making a drink for her to inspire her to make a single. But if you replay it enough and give her different types of drinks to inspire her, you will get different songs and eventually get an entire album of songs. This is how important the drinks are now, and some drinks can only be unlocked during specific parts of the story. You can no longer unlock everything in the free brew mode. It further incentivizes the importance of the story. The second reason why the gameplay feels more involved is the new mechanic. Handing characters items with their drinks is another reason why their stories could change. While you could be giving them the perfect drink, they could be missing an important item, or you could remember to give them the item but give them the wrong drink. This causes you to really have to make sure that you remember to give the characters the items, but to also pay attention to them in order to get a clue of what drink works best. One way you can tell if it is the right drink is if it has a special name. If not, it's probably not right. But like I said, there are multiple pathways that can incentivize you to keep replaying. The game allows you to load any day of the week that has story. This mechanic can allow you to do the multiple pathways much simpler since you can go to any specific day you missed the trigger on. You don't have to replay the whole game, you can just go to day 10 instead of doing the whole thing. It also feels natural since the lore of your character is that you are a time traveler. The fact you do that feels right at home and can also be triggered when you see that you got an achievement for forgetting to give someone a wedding invitation. Yeah, this mechanic is not only great, but also does not force you to reread all the dialogue. You know, the fast forward feature lets you skip everything, but stops at moments you have not seen before. Everything works well with one another, and they brought back the Tomodo chill page, and it's slightly better. The Tomodo chill page is back, but will not increase if the character's problems are not resolved or you do not get close enough with them. They don't imply that you'll find information about the drinks on there, but because of that, I'm a little more satisfied with it. And because you have to unlock it by building their bond, it makes gathering the art from it actually feel like you have to do something. It's not just whatever. The newspaper is also back, and it still adds lore about the world that the developers created. The atmosphere and music are still as beautiful, calming, and relaxing as ever. Not just that, since you can unlock more music by playing the game. Andrew Jeremy did amazing, or Remy Gendrew. The music is beautiful. I bought the soundtrack this time. I wanted to for the first game, but I decided not to. But for this one, oh, you bet I bought the soundtrack. It is so beautiful and emotionally just mwah, beautiful. Coffee Talk 2 Hibiscus and Butterflies, I could honestly say is a perfect sequel. Everything great from the first game remains, but is given improvements to add more. The story not only is written with your character being more attached to everyone because they're now in Freya's position, but it also allows for the player to be invested with the world around them. The music is great and you can unlock more, like I said. The drinks, while still simple, thanks to the item mechanic, are now much more in-depth since there are multiple things that can trigger multiple pathways. Everything about the game was improved on from the first game, which makes me want to say that Coffee Talk 2 is a perfect sequel. It improves on everything while still being its own game. The only downside would be that there are no graphic novel comics now, which show the characters living their lives before entering the cafe. It was nice and provided more characterizations to them. Coffee Talk 2 doesn't have it. Instead, it feels like they focus more on multiple different story pathways. While the game still lost the graphic novels, it still retained the gallery and extra modes. Free brew mode is back, and now you can change what character is being served. It can be anybody now. And endless mode still has the same problem from the first game, but since the game itself has much more replay value, I don't find the endless mode as big of an issue. The endless mode starts off the same. It is easy, but the more drinks you serve, the harder and harder it gets. The game mode still makes it so if you want the achievements, you are almost going to need a guide. But like I said, this does now feel like an extra and not making me so negative on it. It doesn't feel like filler. It feels genuinely an extra. It is hard to say if it's because I learned about the characteristics mechanic from the first game, but I still don't need to play this to feel fulfilled. Coffee Talk 2 is such an amazing game that I implore all of you to give it a shot. It would be better if you also enjoyed the story of the first game, but by all means, both games are a great experience. But I would say Coffee Talk 2 is the better game. It is so much fun. It has reasons to get multiple endings and rewards experimentation. If you also wanted to get into graphic novels, I think these two games are great, and even would say When the Past Was Around is another game that would be a great start. Overall, Coffee Talk 2 Hibiscus and Butterflies is not just an amazing experience, but with all its improvements, it's a perfect sequel, but also a great game. Hell, the latte art speaks for my enjoyment. In the first game, I could barely make anything, but now my passion is starting to bleed in, and my art is actually looking like art. Hell, by the third game, I'll be making a Picasso. This alone is the embodiment of my enjoyment, and it makes me want to say to just go buy and play this game. I've never fallen in love with a franchise like this in such a long time, and I hope that whatever projects this studio works on gives them more success to make more passion projects like these. I don't know if this was a passion project, but they put a lot of passion into it, and it's well worth the purchase. With all that said, thank you guys for watching. You guys have a good one, and take care.